We're going to talk about preferences now. Preferences is a pretty powerful part of the program. And preferences here might save you a lot of time by not asking you redundant questions, or will let you custom tailor certain things in the program for your particular application that makes sense for you. Like some of the questions you might be asked when you download, you could turn those things off here. Like there's other warnings you might be able to turn off. Printing, again, what do you want to have on your printouts? You want a logo. And here's some adjustments because all printers are not treated the same. And because all printers and different operating systems and different computers are not the same, this lets you do some fine tuning if some kind of printout doesn't look quite right. Main screen, um, you want to auto save. This can auto saves everything you do so that if the program dies, you can recover it when next time you go back in. Show the comparison run. We talked about that in one of the movie files. Again, some screens are a little funny, and this was necessary to make certain computer screens show the main screen correctly. Filing system, pretty short. What's the default floppy drive or external disk drive? How many tests are kept in the history log? It's set to 25, but you can have up to 100 tests kept in the history log. And that is a list of things you've recently worked with. You may have recorded the data, may have opened up the test for a comparison, but the history log is where you can pick things for reports, for comparison graphs, or you can also just click on it and open a test from the history log without having to go through the library. If it's something you just recently worked with, that can save you some time. Calculations. Do you want things reported, how many decimal places, like this? Maybe no decimal places, or if you got very small, or like RC motors, you might want it to, like in this case, 4 decimal places. We don't want that because that gets to be a pain. We want bigger engines. How do you want? Do you want Newton meters and kilowatts, horsepower, ounce inches, again, for radio controlled cars? Um, Here's one that we didn't touch on much. Do you want to allow a correction factor for certain channels? And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to pick out, I'm going to show you on an old test where you click on DataMite, and here's the torque calibration. And now you have this correction button down here. And what would happen is, let's say the 0 has drifted on your torque setting. This is the one that's most important to dyno operators. If it's drifted a little bit, let's say it's reading 2 foot-pounds too high. The correction here, it says, is meant an adjustment. So whatever you put in here is what is going to be added to the calibration. If it's reading 2 foot-pounds too high, you type in a -2. If it's reading 2 foot-pounds too low, it's reading a if it's reading 2 foot-pounds too low, you put in a +2 or just plain 2. Or what you can do is you can set up a particular condition and then have it read the voltage. And then after it reads the voltage, it would ask you, what number do you want this to be? So you might say, okay, read this condition, and it comes up with 5.535, let's say. And then it's going to say, what torque is this supposed to be? And you say it's supposed to be 0. And that way it'll re-zero itself for you. And this is not only for torque, it can be used for a lot of different channels, like a temperature channel and stuff also. But that is a handy feature. So we're back in preferences. We keep that turned off because, again, if you're not very familiar with computers or stuff, or don't take a lot of care, this could actually screw you up more than help you. So the default is to turn that off. And you can see here, restore defaults. If you think you've screwed something up, you say, get me back to the factory settings, just click on this button, and it will turn everything back to the factory settings. For chassis dynos, torque being measured is what we think it's going to be at the flywheel, going through the gear ratios and stuff, or the torque is at the rollers, like some of the old chassis dynos used to be. Some other things here. This, I believe, is for the DataMite 2, the old DataMite 2. Engine RPMs, calculate RPM. This can be very handy. For RC motors, you may want to turn this on. If you don't have something that's going up past 30,000 RPM, keep this turned off. DataMite 2 configuration. And what this basically does here is it divides your RPM settings by 2. Or I forget, maybe it multiplies them by 2. It multiplies them by 2, I'm sorry. So this could be used if you have what we call the divide by 2 inductive pickup. For 99.9% of the time, you're going to have that turned to no. More calculations. Units. You can say, I want the entire program to be metric, or maybe you want the program to be metric, but the engine dimensions you want, I'm sorry, the entire program to be English, but the engine dimensions to be metric, millimeters for the bore and stroke and such. Absorber diners, do you want to allow for correcting for engine inertia effects? Yes or no? No is the more foolproof way to do it, because if you're not careful, you will forget to put in some crank specs or weights of the flywheels, and you'll get variation in your data and you won't know why. DataMite 3, some things special for the DataMite 3. The frequency signal, are you triggering out the leading or trailing edge? This could have, if you're getting noise, you might want to try changing that. Hold off time, how much time do you let go before you look for another pulse? If you got real high RPM engines with lots of pulses coming in, you got to keep this low. If you got low amount of pulses coming in, lower RPM stuff, and you're getting noise spikes, like it's double firing, like the sensor's rattling, you can turn this up, and it will eliminate double firing from certain pulses. That could also, trailing edge versus leading edge could do that. Do fast current readings calculations. If you got on the current reading screen some complicated calculations like air fuel, which is a table, a lookup table, or several lookup tables, the program may not have enough time to do all the calculations and update the display. You can turn this on to a yes. Theoretically, yes and no should work the same. There's no downside to turning it on yes. But the real downside is it has been more well troubleshooted with this to no. So typically you say if you don't need it, keep it on no, because that's how 99% of our users have it. But if you got some case where you got some very complex calculations going on to display the data on the current reading screen where the gauges are, you may have to turn this to yes. And this is turn fan off when shutting down. Some people just want, every time you shut the program down, turn the fan off on your DataMite 3. In the Mini, I believe it works on the Mini also. So in the DataMite, the USB DataMites, if you want the fan to turn off when you shut the program down, turn this off. Oh, I'm sorry, turn this on. Turn it on if you want this fan to shut down when you turn the program off. This we covered in a previous one, but your fuel for brake spec, you want to just use the first channel found in the list of calibrations. You want to add the 2 channels if you got 2 fuel channels, or do you want to subtract the 2 channels? Emailing, we touched on this in other movies a little bit, but Outlook Express is the best. And if you want to create smaller files, 16 color files in the graphs, you may want to find your MS Paint program through this browse button and have that loaded in there. Then you can email much smaller graph files by selecting the 16 color graphs. Other graphing things here, some adjustments for different types of screens. This one here is a very powerful feature. Do you want all increments and filtering in throughout the different screens in the programs to be the same, matching the main screen? You'd select that. Or if you don't mind that they're different and give you more freedom and flexibility, you'd select this first one. Okay, dual cursors. A couple options there. When we turn dual cursors on, the default is show the difference between the 2 cursors. Graph colors. If you got certain graph colors that aren't printing well, or you just don't like them on your screen, this gives you the option to change the different graph colors here.